going off in the other room. So that's kind of par for the course. And tonight we're meeting regarding Cibola Loop and kind of a status report on the affordable housing portion of that. Before we get into the affordable housing, though, I want to kind of give a little background. And is this being recorded, Rick?
Yes, I just hit record.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That way we could put it out on YouTube or whatever. That might be another way to get to some folks. So just a quick update on just the whole site. It's a 25-acre site, as you know, and there's another 5 acres that we still haven't acquired yet. We're still looking for the money for that particular piece of land, and that's probably the most critical piece, because that's the critical portion for drainage. We have conceptual designs for that were done many years ago, and we are actually in design for the multi-generational center at this point in time, and that is being conducted and it's being spearheaded by Anna Sanchez from the Office of Senior Affairs. She has a team, and I want to introduce tonight the people from Department of Family and Community Services. They are all the people that are working on the affordable housing portion of this, and that would be the site that's directly behind the police department, across from the fire. Well, the police station is across from the fire station, but it's right behind the police station. We've gone out twice to bid, and Rick's going to talk. Rick Hadon, when he talks, is going to talk a little bit about that. He's sort of the manager. I want to introduce Carol Pierce, who's with us tonight. She's the director, and she's a lovely lady. I asked her tonight if she ever goes home, because she's always working, from what I can tell. Anyway, Lisa Huval is with us tonight. We have also Monica Montoya, and they're all very instrumental in all of our social services and family services across the city, including the homeless shelter and all of those sorts of projects that we're working on. The affordable housing portion is what we're focusing on tonight. As I mentioned, we've gone out to bid twice. We've released the RFP, and we haven't really gotten the results that we were hoping for. So that is why we're here tonight. That's why we're holding this special meeting. I asked the staff if they would, get the community up to speed on where things are. And I think that, we may have to go out to bid again, but we may have to revise our RFP again. I know it's a tough time for everyone with COVID, but people are still across the city. Business is still being conducted. Construction is still happening. The council and the mayor, we've all decided that we need to push our gross receipts taxes as much as possible. So safe distancing and all of that, all of the protocols are in place for COVID. But we are trying to conduct as much construction across the city as possible. This is a priority for me. I met yesterday with the new senators. One is Katie Duhigg, which this is in her district, and Harold Pope. I gave both of them a briefing, and it's right on the edge of Harold Pope's district. So these are really, really important projects to us, and I am going to jump off, but before I do, because I'm going to let the staff move forward with the discussion of the RFPs, I would like to invite you all to my town hall. It's the 4th quarterly town hall next week on Tuesday, and it is I'm pulling up the attachment here just so I can tell you. It's Tuesday, December 15th at 6 p.m. It's going to be a virtual on Zoom and YouTube. So we'll also put it on YouTube. And if you want further information about that, I'm happy to send you the flyer. Just send my office a request and we'll send you the flyer. And if you want to distribute that across District 5 or some of your neighbors, that would be great. I've invited the other West Side counselors to be my guests. We're going to have reports from the police department, fire department, environmental health department. We're also going to have a lovely little segment at the very end after our meeting from the Albuquerque Youth Symphony. They're sending us a little clip from past performances, but we thought that would be a nice way to sort of end our town hall. So with that, of course, you can always reach out to me at Cynthia Borrego at cabq.gov, or you can reach out to my assistant, Susan V. Hill, at Susan V. Hill at cabq.gov. So have a wonderful night. Thank you, Rick, for hosting this, and Carol and Lisa and all of the staff. I look forward to hearing a report regarding this meeting. So I'm going to sign off at this point.
Thank you, Councilor Borrego. As a former youth symphony person, I really appreciate that you are ending your meeting next week. That's a really nice touch.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you. Thank you, Carol.
Yes, you're welcome. And thank you, Dwayne, Anna Marie, and Michael. I think since we've got everybody's names, this is lovely that we're here together. So what we would like to do, we know this meeting is scheduled from 6 to 7, and we want to honor everybody's time. And so what we'll do is we've got about a 15-20 minute max PowerPoint that just lays out what's happening with this project in the acreage that Councilor Borrego described. And so what we would ask, maybe we'll hold our questions to the end, or if you like chat boxes, you could put it in the chat box, and then we'll move directly into discussion. So just thank you for being here very much. I'm very grateful for Deputy Uval, Rick, and Monica. These are some of our leads on looking at affordable housing in our community, and are grateful for all the background and the work on that. So with Rick, I'll hand it to you.
Great. Thank you, Carol. As was mentioned, my name is Rick Hidon. I'm a project manager with the department. I think what we'll do is first just go over the agenda. Again, we've gotten our introductions a couple times now, and we're going to provide an overview with this PowerPoint presentation, discussions on possible senior rental development, and then next steps. And then again, as Carol mentioned, if we can hold all the questions to the end, it'd be easier to get through the presentation, and then we can field any questions that may come up. Okay, so a history of Cibola Loop. Our department, the Department of Family and Community Services, was made aware in 2017 that this property was available. There was other city plan facilities that Councilor Borrego had mentioned, and it appeared that this was a good fit for our department to look towards acquiring for affordable housing purposes. So we had to do our due diligence with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for the funds that we had identified to acquire the site. The site, as Councilor mentioned, is the northeast corner of the loop. As you can see on the screen, it's about 5.12 acres right behind the police station, or the police substation. So the city used 1.439 million of CDBG funds. These are HUD funds that require that at least 51% of the units must be affordable to persons at or households at or below 80% of the area median income. And so what does that mean? 80% of the area median income are as follows. We typically look at a four-person household that earns about $55,000, or a single person that earns nearly $39,000. So these are your typical teachers, city employees, healthcare workers that are, entry level type jobs. So just keep that in mind. This is what we are gearing towards as we looked at a homeownership project. So we put out, as Counselor mentioned, skipped over, we put out 2 requests for proposals. The first one was in 2019. We received 2 proposals under this RFP, and both of them exceeded the home sales price limit. So again, these are HUD funds that we were using in the RFP, and they have limits on how much you can sell homes for. And both proposals came in excess of $250,000, and so the RFP was canceled because it did not meet the regulatory requirements. A second RFP was put out in July of 2020, and unfortunately there were no responses under that RFP. That was clarified in that RFP that there were the regulations that oversaw the funds, and so it just was clear that there was an issue. So what was the issue? So we found out it was due to the increasing cost of construction, that the home sales price limit kind of prohibited this type of project. So the challenges were identified that we thought we would consider using other funding sources besides the HUD funds for construction or down payment assistance. So in order to do that, we had to determine how much subsidy would be needed to make each home affordable. And so we had to do an analysis. We looked at the proposals we received in the first RFP. They varied in size, so we went with the smaller of the 2, looking at a 29-unit project with 51% or more affordable units, which was 15 units. The projected home sales price was $255,000, and that was above what HUD allows. Again, a family of 4, we determined it would have to qualify for a first mortgage of $176,275. And in all reality, what it came down to was there was a need of $80,000 in down payment assistance in order to make a newly constructed home affordable. And it could even be more than that depending on the percent of AMI. So we were just going with the 80% AMI. In addition, we had to also include the land value. What the HUD funds that were used to acquire the land, the $1.4 million, dictated that another $95,000 or so of subsidy would have to be included into the per unit cost. And so this ends up being the $80,000 and then the $95,000, $175,000 or more to make a newly constructed home affordable. And so it was determined that the amount of subsidy needed was, one, unprecedented, and it really did not make this project feasible for home ownership for affordable housing. So then we looked back to the drawing board. So if we're not doing home ownership, what's the next thing that we can do, given that we use the HUD funds to acquire the site? We went back to the appraisal, and it said the highest and best use for the site was a multifamily development, as there was a lot of demand for that. And based on the zoning and appraisal, it could be developed with a mid-size multifamily development. But given we were really sensitive to the community and what they were looking for, what the community had desired for a lower density use focused on seniors, we thought the most feasible option would be a medium density housing development exclusively for seniors. And we realized that there were multiple challenges with home ownership, especially related to a senior home ownership development. The flip side of it is when you're doing rental, it could be exclusively for seniors. And there's a huge need. Based on our 2018 to 2022 consolidated plan, we identified that there were over 12,000 elderly households that are cost burdened, which means that they're paying more than 30% of their income for housing costs. So we know that there's a need for affordable rental units for seniors. what does an affordable rental unit look like for seniors? Well, we've done several of them over the past several years. The most recent is the Generations at West Mesa project. This is on West Central near 57th and Central. This was geared towards seniors raising grandchildren. And so there's a mix of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms units. The thing about this project, as you can see in the pictures, it was designed sandwiched between single family residential on both sides. And so this narrow project had to kind of fit in with the community, and it was designed accordingly. And so the rooftop heights and setbacks mimic single family residential. So it fits in well with the community. I think the neighboring community is welcomed it with open arms just because of the way it was designed, and it's a very, very successful project. Another one was the Quattro Senior Housing. This is on North 4th Street, just north of Mountain Road, near downtown. This one is more urban in design, and it has 56 total units, a mix of studios, 1s and 2s. And it's a very well-designed complex for its site. And it provides meeting space, community space for the residents. Parking is obviously an issue near downtown, and they've, as you can see on the picture all the way to the right, there was some creativity with making some carport style parking underneath the units. And it was just a really well developed project, and very successful as well. The third project is Villa Nueva. It's on Sawmill Community Land Trust, which is just north of Old Town. A 46 unit complex, mix of 1s and 2s. It has services. And I think the one thing that should be mentioned about all of our developments that are department funds is that they all must be professionally managed. We ensure that there are requirements in place that means that there should be an on-site manager. They must be monitored on an annual basis, and we hold them to that. There must be a high level of housing quality standards must be met every year. So they're monitored on an annual basis, and we ensure that every project that we fund meets these requirements. With that, I think we went through all the slides pretty quickly, and I'll hand it back over to Carol for questions and.
Great. Thank you, Rick. So we can take that down so we can see everybody on the Zoom. That's great. Yep. So in summary, we just want to say started out for home ownership, as we've discussed with the community before, to look at $175,000 subsidy when you add the home piece and the land piece is way out of line with what normal subsidies. I think, as Rick mentioned, we might maximize $50,000 subsidy, so $175,000 is just way out of alignment. So what we're proposing is that this would be a medium density development exclusively for seniors, and would look something like, in the design we gave you some of those examples. And so this would be proposed on that 5-acre parcel that Rick showed in the PowerPoint. So that's what we're here to present tonight. And so I'll pause there and see what questions there are. I will say, just there are always choices. And so if the affordable housing and the rental for seniors, I mean, we are recommending that. Our job is to make sure all folks in Albuquerque have access to housing. And since there's definitely a need for that with seniors, we think that's a good way to go. But there always are choices. If that wasn't acceptable for the community, or that didn't seem like a good option, the city could pay back HUD the money, because it's those HUD limitations that require us not to sell the house for too much money, which would create this giant subsidy. We could pay back HUD, and then it could go on the open market. So a private developer could develop it, and then that would be without restrictions. So you're seeing what we are having to deal with our HUD restrictions and what our proposal to really create this housing for seniors, rental housing. So that was my attempt at a summary. And so I think what we should do is just open it up for questions, and we can always pull back up the presentation. And we appreciate you, everybody, waiting for the end just so you got the full presentation. So I wasn't monitoring the chat box, so I don't know if any went in there, but are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Now the one that you're proposing, the Cibola Loop, you're saying it's for seniors, and and it's sort of designed also for seniors who are raising grandchildren, or was that another one?
That was another one that was very
okay.
successful. A recent one open off of Central. So this we are recommending. It's for seniors. It's
Okay.
rental housing.
Can I just ask a quick question about the one for the ones that are raising their grandchildren?
Mm-hmm.
Does it provide, I mean, I don't have kids, but I know that even a young person has a hard time raising kids. I'm 55, and it just seems like raising grandkids would be really difficult. Are there is there some sort of support, for the grandparents? I mean, otherwise it seems like the kids would kind of run amok, the grandkids, and it would be kind of difficult.
So you're asking that, for example, our other project that was.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I so appreciate about that project is a play area was built in that project to try to really have areas for kids built into that project. I can say that that's part of what our responsibility in the city. We make sure folks have access to resources around affordable childcare, because while that's separate from this housing project, we do offer that through the city. That's part of our responsibility, and appreciate working with grandparents raising grandchildren, and have quite a few of them in other projects. Rick or Monica, can you speak to anything else in that other project? Seems like there's some interest on grandparents raising children. It is definitely a big trend.
Yeah, and I mean the teenagers, so easy for them to get into trouble, and it's so hard for people to really come down on and be like, no, you can't do that, especially for grandparents. So I guess that's what I was talking about too, like, graffiti in the area, that kind of thing, because the grandparents do have probably a hard time. Teenagers, a young parent would too.
So the project that you were speaking of is called Generations at West Mesa. That project is owned by a nonprofit, and it has a professional management company to manage it, and that's for the rental units. The nonprofit does also have on-site services provided to the residents and their families to help support raising the grandchildren. So there are, the nonprofit is actually Catholic Charities, and they have a number of services on site to assist with that. So, while it's not a full daycare or childcare, they do have a number of services to assist with that.
And then how many calls for service does APD get for an area like that? Just out of curiosity. I mean, is it because I feel like it is important to have affordable housing. And actually where I live is kind of considered, my house was a HUD repo when I bought it. So I just want to know, just for my own area too, to be more receptive to these kinds of projects. Kind of, like I said, calls for service do police get? What kind of,
I
don't know. You know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, I don't know that we have that data. I mean, we enjoy working with neighborhoods to just make sure that they understand, it's a need in our community for rental housing, really nicely done rental housing that integrates into a neighborhood. And that's why Rick picked the ones he did. That, in fact, one of those is in my neighborhood. Love it. Have been there several times. So we think when it blends in with the neighborhood, it's just meeting another need of our community and not necessarily driving up increased calls. I mean, sometimes I
Right.
think that's a bit of a myth or a perception that folks
Right.
have, but not
No, they're
necessarily.
homeless. They're not criminals. Or
Right.
they, you know what I mean? It's,
Right.
yeah, no,
Well,
I totally agree with that. They're not
yeah.
criminals. They just need housing.
Yeah, and none
Yeah.
of the folks in these projects are homeless. They're in their home, in the apartment,
Right.
or right.
And
Yeah.
I think it's worth noting that, as I mentioned before, these every property that the city funds must be professionally managed, and with that
Mhm.
professional management company, they must participate in the crime-free multifamily housing program that the city offers. So it's a arm of APD to make sure that the complex is in compliance, and if there's issues with calls for service, they go out there and address them. So we don't see a whole lot. I'm not going to say that every it's on a case by case basis, but
Right.
that our management companies have a really good handle on the issues that as they arise and address them in a timely manner.
Okay. No,
So-
that's very helpful because I do, I think with knowledge comes acceptance, and
Yeah.
the more information I get, the more, the more I'll know what we're talking about. And yeah.
Yes, no,
Thanks.
that's great. So let me just telescope out a little bit. So we thought we could do home ownership. The dollars and cents don't work out with a way over the top subsidy. So that's why we're going to rental housing for seniors like we've done in other neighborhoods. And we'd love to know your thoughts about that. Michael, I don't want to pick on you, but what are your...
Well, personally, some years back when Dan Lewis was the councilman and this all came up, it was supposed to be senior housing, low-income senior housing. And I'm amazed at the cost of those single dwelling homes. I mean, obviously the rich get richer and the poor are getting poorer. It just blows my mind. But I'm glad to see you're going with senior housing. It needs to be done. And I've got some relation that we've known before back in our home state. And that's what saved their lives, was the ability to have this type of housing for themselves. So I'm glad to see it senior. And from what you've shown of those other developments, they're excellent, so I'm glad it's there. And the other thing, not to change the subject, but there was discussion of libraries and this multicultural centers and so on and so forth. Are those still on the board for the rest of that property if that would happen?
Yes, there is another parcel, and I won't say how many acres. So the whole thing's 25 acres. 5 acres has not been purchased. It's needed for drainage and that kind of thing.
I gotcha.
There's our 5 acres that we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, right.
And then 5 acres, right? Yes. And then there is another chunk of land. Thank you, Rick. That our fellow department, the Department of Senior Affairs, is working on for a multi-gen site. And we've had
Wonderful.
the pleasure of being with them, looking at that. Really exciting to think about the classrooms and what would be there for seniors, as well as some youth programming as well, with the number of young families in the area. So it's slated to be a beautiful site. I'm less familiar with what with cultural and the potential of a library, but the
library was a big deal.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that, but the multi-gen site, boy, Director Sanchez, Director of Senior Affairs, really going great guns with that, doing really a beautiful job in that site.
Well, it's a good location, so beautiful things should be done with it, because it's a marvelous site. So
yes.
I would like to see a library there.
Well, and I think we overall are very excited about this Cibola project because of all the growth on the west side.
Yeah, absolutely.
We know there's lots of families, lots of activities. And so whether it's to have housing there, like we're talking, a multi-gen center, we know that the closest community center is back in Taylor Ranch, the Don Newton Community Center, which is part of our department. We think is beautiful. It's great, but it's back down the road in Taylor Ranch. So I think the development on this site holds much promise.
Yeah, it would be great. It'd be great.
Dwayne, could I go to you and see what questions you might have?
Yes, thank you for reading my mind. I was going to try to jump in here.
Okay.
So I'm trying to visualize what form this would take. This would be like, I guess, apartment buildings rather than single family homes, I guess, right?
Right.
So how many, about how many housing units would you anticipate on this 5 acres?
And Rick, I think you had a medium range 77 to
143 is what's allowable. Obviously, it could be less than that. And you know, there are height requirements based on zoning of like 38 feet. So we're not talking, you know, too many stories. Probably max of 3 stories or so. So just keep that in mind. It's not. It depends on what's proposed, and you know that's the beauty of an RFP is we can stipulate a number of desires to, as far as layout goes and design. The way they use the site, the developers that propose these types of projects have basically, you know, their opportunity to win a competition or a RFP based on how well they address the community's needs and desires. So, you know, you have 5 acres site, and you know, if there's on the lower end, you know, 60, 70 units, it could be spread out and not be multi-story. It just depends on the design of each project.
So they could be, I would assume, anywhere from studio to maybe 1 or 2 bedroom units. Should that be accurate?
Correct. The one outlier of our projects was the one for generations to grandparents raising grandchildren, and that's not the typical project. The typical project is 1s and 2s are what we typically see.
Mm-hmm.
So
and another thing in its favor is it's so close to the transit center there on Ellison too.
Yes.
So that would be a real positive, I would think.
Right. I think that's positive, as well as we said, the access to the multi-gen or library or whatever. It just holds to be a very sweet spot in the area there for seniors.
It really so. Yeah.
One other thing I should probably mention is what we've seen with the senior developments that we have funded in the past is that another benefit when we talk about these types of developments, it's always brought up about parking and congestion, and you know, as you increase rooftops, you increase congestion with motor vehicles. With senior developments, we don't see that so much because a lot of seniors do not maybe drive or have a car. They rely on public transportation, things of that nature. So the impact is not as great as if it were just a regular multifamily development.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Any other questions? So we really are glad we had this evening because yeah, Michael, do you have a question?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, okay.
And again, it's a beautiful site, so great things can be done there.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, and that's why we, with some pride, show you some of those projects that went to RFP, a request for proposal. A developer responded, met the criteria, and we're always looking for design, creativity, how it blends in with the neighborhood. And so that's why we show you those three of many different projects we have that we're really proud of. They're really gems in our community. It's worked well in those neighborhoods. And most important, it gives people housing that is a good fit for them and their lifestyle. And we think that's what's really important here in our community. So I think our next steps, hearing that there's some understanding why we had to switch courses to do a big subsidy does not make sense. I think what we'll get back with Councilor Borrego on the next steps, but if we go in this direction for that senior rental housing, then we would be putting out a request for proposal so that project can get going. And we are very confident with what's happening in the market that we would have, we hope, a good handful of respondents on this RFP, given the need for rental housing. So with that, Deputy Uval, do you have anything to add? You've been very involved in this project.
No, thank you to those of you that are on the call this evening. I just appreciate you listening to our kind of overview and proposal for this site, and also your questions and your comments, very thoughtful. I think all of us at Family and Community Services are very excited about the idea of doing a really nice rental project for low and moderate income seniors on this site. You know, and like Michael, like you were saying, over time, having other community facilities on this site, it just seems like it's just we have the opportunity here to create something really great for senior citizens in our community. That's not only affordable, but like walking distance to these wonderful community facilities. So I just appreciate people's thoughtfulness and openness to this proposed project.
Thank you. And just Monica and Rick, well, anything you'd like to add? And I just do want to acknowledge behind any project to have to do an RFP twice, of which Rick explained, that kind of takes a big old lift to do that, and then to realize that's not going to work. So our 15 slide RFP represents numerous hours, countless hours of work that was behind that has led us to this point. So I just really want to thank you, Monica and Rick and Lisa as well, for all your work. Is there anything, Rick, Monica, you two would like to add?
No, not really. I think we've covered it all. Just really want to thank everyone again for joining us and for being open to our proposal. And hopefully we can develop a good project for seniors.
Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you all. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.